Hi, friends. How you doing today? This is a special edition of the podcast, and I'm sitting here with a good friend of mine, Blake Trent, another fellow United Methodist. And so we're going to do I have a little conversation and talk about the connection of United Methodist Church in just a moment. But let's get started, all right? So, we live in a time when there are a lot of churches that have like satellite churches, and they say, our church, we've got 5 campuses. And so, but like in the connection of the North Georgia, if we look of ourselves as one church in the United Methodist Church, we have many campuses.
Almost 500, in North Georgia alone. Yeah.
So you pastor our Dallas campus.
That's it. That's right. Yeah. The Dallas campus. Yeah. So I'm at Dallas First United Methodist Church.
Yeah.
I've been there for June will be the start of year 7.
Wow.
And I think if you include, we're transitioning now from North Georgia to one Georgia. So it's probably closer to 700, 650. So.
I don't know. We should know that.
Yeah.
We should know
650 and 700.
And so
Fact
anyway,
check us.
Yeah. And so we're, what I want to do, we're having kind of a new series in our podcast, is to get to know some of the other pastors that are here that are serving North Georgia. And so today, starting off with Blake. And so Blake, tell me a little bit about your story. I don't know your story.
Okay.
I know some of the churches you've served, but I don't know your call to ministry and where you went to seminary and all that good stuff.
That's always some of the funny stuff, right? Is that's how we kind of know each other as pastors, is we know where somebody served, what we heard about where they're going, this, that, or the other. So
where's home for you? Where'd you grow up?
Originally, I'm from Dahlonega, Georgia.
Okay.
And that's always a funny story for United Methodist, because I grew up in Dahlonega, Georgia, and my family didn't really go to church. My parents worked on weekends a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So I didn't even know Camp Glisson existed until I was in high school.
Is that right?
Yeah. And that's because they built a new high school, and it was behind... in front of Camp Glisson. So Camp Glisson is behind Lumpkin County High School. And I remember going down there for some senior photos or something at one point, and realizing that I had been attending the Methodist Church in Dahlonega at the time, the United Methodist Church there. And then I was going, oh, wait, these are all connected. But,
that's one of the jewels of the conference.
Yeah, it is. It's beautiful. Yeah.
And what is this is an anniversary for them, right?
This year is 100 years of Camp Glisson being in existence and having summer camp for 100 years. So grew up there. I am the first person in my family to graduate from high school. I'm the first person in my family to go to college. And then I went to University of Georgia, and
go Dogs.
Yeah, go Dogs. Yeah. So basically, what I always tell people is, so I went to the University of Georgia, and I really thought I was going to be a journalist. I wanted to be a writer. Mm-hmm. I love storytelling. I love writing and reading. And what I did there, I won a few small time awards for sports journalism, but in the end, I had been volunteering the entire time at Athens First United Methodist Church with the youth group.
Is that right? Yeah.
And somewhere in the midst of my senior year, I always equate it to the guy who decides that he really loves his hobby more than his job, and decides he's going to open his own businesses. I liked telling stories. I didn't like the stories I was telling as much as I did the story of Jesus Christ and the church and of God. And so my senior year, I just said, I think I'm going to go to seminary. I feel like God's calling me to this. And so about the time I said that, there was a youth ministry job that opened up at a little church in Athens called Chapelwood United Methodist Church. So I started working there for I don't even know how much. Wasn't much. And then I went to seminary, and I went to Gammon Theological Seminary, which is a HBCU, historic black college university, and that's our United Methodist. It's not technically on Clark Atlanta's campus, but it's close by.
Close enough, yeah. Yeah.
So that's where I went to seminary.
So that's great. All right, and so you're married.
I'm married, yeah.
So was that before or after seminary? When did that happen along the way?
That was after seminary. So I was married in 2016. I graduated in 2015 from seminary.
Yeah.
Met my wife in LaGrange. I was serving there as a youth minister, and then when I was ordained, I became their associate pastor. And so LaGrange, Georgia was very good to me. I not only got to, get ordained and be an associate there, but I met my wife there.
Was she a student at LaGrange?
No, so she is a double graduate of LaGrange College, but she is a music teacher. So she taught chorus there.
Oh, wow.
Now she teaches elementary chorus in Cobb County. So
all right.
It's a little
Good for her.
Little less intense. There are no evening rehearsals, which is pretty great.
Yeah.
She,
So you were a new father also.
Yes, we just had our first child. His name is Harry, and Harry is 2 months old.
You named after Harry Potter.
Yeah, exactly. No, we were joking about this at lunch that I'm afraid that's what everybody's going to think. I did make a joke the other day when we were changing his diaper. I said, "You're a wizard, Harry." But not a wizard. But anyway, but he's named after my father, Harold.
Yeah.
So we named him after my father and my wife's father. And we didn't want to do like a junior or we were joking back and forth about, we didn't know that how many people, when our kid is old enough, would know friends, but we had played with the idea of making Joseph his first name and Harold his middle name, but we were like, how many people are going to walk up and go, "How you doing?" like Joey from Friends. So we ended up finally just going with Harry because it's kind of unique.
Yeah. I love that. I love that name. Yeah. All right. That's awesome. Well, I wanted to talk a little bit about what connects us as United Methodist.
Yeah.
Okay. So, we do have some certain
secret handshakes.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Casseroles.
Yeah, that's right.
That stuff. But our theology, and Wesleyan theology, each church may be a little different, unique. In their approach to worship style or the ministries they might have, but they're. Is just a part of, just sort of basic Wesleyan theology that connects us. And so, just not to like put you before the board of ministry here, but talk
Been
about
there, done that.
You did not grow up in church, but then went to a Methodist church. Did you?
Yeah.
So, what is it that drew you, besides location, to our theology?
Well, yeah, so I won't mention the other church that I went to before I became a United Methodist, but I will say, like, what I found whenever I started attending United Methodist Church is that there was this focus more on grace than on condemnation, and there was also this focus on grace and action. Mm-hmm. I remember I may have started going to the United Methodist Church when I was about 17, so I was maybe a junior. And they had just had a mission trip for their youth, and I didn't go on it, but I thought that was interesting. And so I went back to my other denominational church that was a little bit smaller, it's a different church, and mentioned this idea. And all of the things seemed to center around not really doing anything, but definitely making people, especially young people, feel bad about not knowing Jesus.
Yeah.
And so after a while, I sort of leapfrog back and forth, and finally I just said, I'm more attracted to this idea that God is gracious and loving, and also to this belief that God calls us to action.
Yeah,
to serve.
And people come to Christ, I think, more out of being loved than being scared and cornered and guilt tripped and that sort of thing.
Well, and I think you can begin a relationship that way, but a relationship based on fear or based on shame over time has to evolve into something more and something with more depth. And for me, that's where grace plays such an enormous role.
Right, yeah.
You are loved, not as you are, as you are, not as you should be, because you're never going to be as you should be, but God still loves you and journeys with you and offers you grace.
Well, what's happening over in Dallas? What are you excited about in ministry? I know that y'all are, maybe by the time this airs, you guys may be already doing your podcast, but I know our conversation initially began over
talking about podcasts.
But
so I think we're talking about things like that. We're seeing a sort of a boom in our community, just growth happening. And so I think we're talking a lot about how do we reach that new community. There's more and more coming in. We had our largest confirmation class since I've been there this past year, and so trying to think about how we connect with that community a little bit better. And I was telling Dave this earlier, that one of the things is trying to figure out how we create ministries that serve the folks that are already at the church, but also reach out far beyond it. And for anybody who has been part of any church, whether it's United Methodist or not, that's always the balance of the scales that we have to try to think about. Is we have to think about how we minister to the people who are already here, but how we focus also on the people who are not yet here, because that's the call of the gospel, is to reach new people and spread the good news.
And so you guys are in Paulding County, which is a super fast growing county, just like Cherokee County where we are is.
Yeah.
And so, the opportunities are there, and it's just how do we make the church, step out of the walls into the community, and finding those places, because I do have this core belief that people need Jesus. You know,
yeah,
that's
sure.
It's a good thing I'm in.
We
the
wouldn't be
profession.
into this gig, without it. Yeah, right, yeah.
And but you know, I recognize in the era that we're living in that there have been a lot of maybe misunderstandings of what the church represents or who Jesus is, and so how to be in touch with the authentic Jesus. That is our task, and so it's changed. And I'm much older than you, of course. Because I just had my first.
Don't look it.
Yeah, I just had my first grandchild. You just had your first child,
and they're about the same age, which is kind of funny. Yeah.
So, but we used to just kind of be able to open the doors.
People would
but
come
in. Now, not only have to open the doors, we have to sort of also sometimes kind of do some repair work with someone who has been either de-churched or unchurched or hurt by the church, and so
one of the things that we talked about a minute ago was you said that you guys had done a little round robin kind of a hot wings conversation with lots of different pastors for the community of Cherokee County. And, one of the things that I did when I was going through ordination, which is a long process in the United Methodist Church of, doing a lot of paperwork, answering a lot of questions, being sure that you understand our theology and doctrine and all the things that come with our polity. But I did a thing called Wing Church, and it was geared toward talking with people at a bar and grill on wing night. Mm-hmm. And the key was I had to tell church folks, you're not allowed to come. Mm-hmm. This is for people who don't go to church or who maybe, are curious but have not had great experiences. And the more I heard some of the stories, I thought, well, man, if that was my experience of church or of people who say they believe in Jesus, maybe I wouldn't go either. And it was a lot of me going, I don't believe in that God either. That's not a very good experience.
Right, yeah. I
hope you'll give us a second chance because that's not every church and that's not every experience.
Yeah.
So... yeah. Well, but you have that opportunity, and I think this is the hard part for all of us to have the doors open, but also be willing and brave enough to walk out them on occasion to go reach people. You said how many kids are signed up for soccer here now?
No, 425, something like that.
I mean, like 10% of 425 is an enormous, amount of people influxing into the church.
Right.
1% is an enormous amount of people. Mm-hmm. And so finding a way to be present on the soccer field, I think is just as much ministry as anything else that you do. Because that's where people already naturally gather. Mm-hmm. And therefore, I think I'm not yet there to learn it. Maybe your daughter isn't either, or your son or your daughter-in-law, whoever it is that had the baby. Was it your daughter who had the first baby? Yeah. So your daughter and son-in-law probably aren't there yet, and we're not there because we got a 2-month-old and y'all got a 3-month-old.
Yeah.
But I feel pretty certain that our community is going to start building personally.
Yeah.
When we get around people who have kids our age. And
sure.
If you've got 425 people on the soccer field, they're already making community. We just need to figure out how to make it a church community as well.
Like Paulding County, we're blessed with lots of churches in Hickory Flat, but I do think that there is a community, and so I'm not expecting that everybody on the soccer field is unchurched someplace.
Yeah,
they've all probably all love their church or great churches, but I do know that there are people that are slipping through the cracks.
Absolutely,
that are looking for community, and that's another thing. I mean, why people go to the soccer fields? Why do people go to trivia night? Why do people do these things? Is there is a need for community that people have?
Yeah,
my son. He owns a restaurant, so he's not able. I mean, even if he was able to go on Sundays, it's hard. But like he has talked about that with he and his wife. How do we meet people? And he's talked about he hasn't been in church in a while. He's been talking about getting back in, some kind of church thing so they can meet people that maybe share some of the values that they've got. And
that's the hard thing, right? Is I can't remember the statistic. It'd be worth looking up the amount of people who don't go to church because they go to work on Sunday.
Right.
And that was part of my experience growing up is I'm pretty sure my stepfather worked a lot of the weekends. And that's a challenge for people. We don't think about it all that much because that's, we work every weekend, a major holiday, but
Yeah.
that's a lot of people that's when they're working, and there is more competition out there for things to take your time, and there's less time for it.
Maybe we need to start a midweek service or a Thursday night service.
It could be, or a winged service,
Well, one of the things with church, with things like what we're doing here, but even like, and I know your service is online too. Most churches are doing online service, so there are opportunities to reach, but it's still not getting into that community. So having times, beyond Sundays for people to connect and to be a part of church. Yeah. Well, Blake, thanks for doing this. We're not that far apart. We've done some things with Cherokee County pastors, but y'all are adjacent to us. So,
absolutely, yeah.
We need to do some things together. But I appreciate your work down there in Dallas, and
we appreciate y'all. And thanks for letting us learn. Maybe they can cross off in the graphics and say, Blake and Dave's.
I know. I like it. Tell them the name.
Blake and Dave's deep dive.
Yeah. Tell them the name of your podcast.
So we haven't done it yet. So we're thinking about doing a podcast, and right now we're thinking about calling it If I'm Being Honest, and it gives people, we're going to do it kind of interview style and give people an opportunity to talk about their faith, their spirituality from a place of honesty, but we're in the early stages.
So Blake, If I'm Being Honest.
Yeah.
I love that name.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
That's good. Yeah. I like the whole concept, but that's great. Yeah. Turns out there's like thousands of deep dive of some
so it had to be Nick and Dave's.
Yeah. There's like a lot of, if you go like Apple podcast and like put that in the, it's going to be dozens and dozens.
It might end up with a scuba diving, do's and don'ts for scuba diving. Yeah.
Sure. There's probably a deep dive podcast on scuba diving.
That's probably so.
And so that's for people who take it literally.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But anyway, thanks for chatting with me, and God bless you, and Godspeed on your journey, and we'll see you again soon.
You too. Thanks.
God bless. Thanks, everybody.